cultural treasures being lost to modern-day pillagers. Beyond the illicit trade in archaeological artifacts, there is also the debate over who owns the antiquities that define our common history, especially when many of these treasures were taken from their native lands during periods of colonial rule. On today's show, we speak with the world-renowned archaeologist and Egyptologist Dr. Zahi Hawass and ask who owns the world treasures. Dr. Hawass is the Secretary General of the Egyptian Supreme Council of Antiquities. You may also recognize him from his many appearances on the popular History Channel series Digging for the Truth, and he's joining us from New York. Dr. Hawass, good to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
So I have to start off by asking you to tell me about the Department of Stolen Antiquities, what exactly it does, its work, and how much real power does it have to make change?
Since I became the head of Egypt Antiquities, I did open this department, and I really thought it's very important that we have to follow those who steal our artifacts. I'm not talking about the artifact that has been taken out of Egypt in the past, but I'm talking about two important things. Number one, what the object that I do have evidence that's stolen from Egypt, like a relief cut from a tomb or a statue staked from a magazine. For example, last week we did return from New York City an object in the shape of a duck used as a vessel for perfume. It was on sale at Christie Hall. When we saw it in the internet, we had to stop it. And we're in the process now to discover also in New York City a magazine in Maadi. Over 25 artifacts has been taken out. Then I'm really after this. In the same time, I'm after the unique artifacts like Rosetta Stone.
Yes, sir, I'll ask you more about that in a second. Apart from this perfume duck that you just got back from New York City, I have to ask you, sir, I know that you've actually recovered in the time you've been in this job more than about 4,000 antiquities and valuable items. And I wonder what examples, apart from that, the ones you gave, examples you can give, and really when it comes to how many are still out there, do you know how many are still out there that need to be returned?
You know, the problem that we don't really have any count of what has been stolen from Egypt. I'm trying to do inventory now in a database of what has been stolen, but it's so difficult because sometimes when I open a store and this store never opened since 100 years, we open it and we discover that there is many artifacts has been taken out of this store. Then we began to look at it everywhere. The problem that I can't know how many artifacts has been stolen out of Egypt.
Well, sir, we had a few email questions, and I just want to get them to you. One is actually a bit of a comment, and it came from Beth in the United States, and she sent this by the email. She said, "They are treasures to behold, but they are part of history and the culture of countries they came from. Colonization robbed countries of so much, reducing them to shadows of what they once were. It is only right to they return home." Now, in taking that comment into account, I have to also ask you, I know you've had a battle to get some of them back, and I wonder how much of a battle, for example, with the St. Louis Art Museum you had to get back the 3,200-year-old mummy mask that they bought back in 1998.
For example, sometimes museums can have something really goodwill to do, like the Michael Carlis Museum in Atlanta, Georgia, when they had the mummy of Ramses I and they found that this is a mummy of a king, they give it to us back. But St. Louis Art Museum, I think the director is making a big mistake, because I offered to him all the evidence that this mask was stolen from one of the stores at Saqqara, and they refused to bring it. And that's why I wrote to the museum department, I wrote to the State Department in the States, and even I wrote to schools of kids, tell them not to go and visit that museum, because there is an artifact belong to a country that was stolen and taken out and should come back to Egypt.
Now, sir, it's very interesting to read some of your comments sometimes in the media that you're quite pragmatic. You don't say that they all have to be returned as such. In some of the cases, I know you're looking for them to visit. For example, the Rosetta Stone you mentioned in Britain, in the British Museum, and also the bust of Nefertiti in the Egyptian Museum in Berlin. You look to have these come to visit Egypt. Now, explain that principle to me and the other objects.
These are 5 unique artifacts that Egypt, the homeland of the pharaohs, do not have. Rosetta Stone in the British Museum, the bust of Nefertiti in Berlin, the Zodiac at the Louvre, the statue of the architect of the Great Pyramid at Hildesheim Museum, and the statue of the architect of the Second Pyramid at Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Then I sent letters to all these museums to have the bust of Nefertiti in year 2010 in the opening of Akhenaten Museum. Akhenaten was the husband, the first one who believed in one God. And we are opening a museum for this king, and I thought that Nefertiti should be there. The other 4 artifacts, I want them to come for a visit for 3 months at the opening of the Grand Museum that we're opening in the shadow of the pyramids. I'm waiting to see the response of these museums.
Well, sir, you mentioned how you're able to write, for example, to schools and tell children not to visit, how you can take action to try and at least make sure everyone is aware of the history and the origins of these artifacts. But I wonder, what real power do you have, if someone is being very difficult? What sort of actions can you take?
For example, we have a very important power, the scientific research. All these museums, they excavate in Egypt. They work in Egypt. And we send to exhibits those people. If any museum will not cooperate with us, if any museum will not be fair with us, what we should do is stop any scientific cooperation between Egypt and this museum.
So, we had an email that came from Zishan Ashraf, and I'll put this to you. It says, this is another example of colonial and cultural oppression of former colonies which lose out on tourism due to missing artifacts. It makes me wonder, there are those critics who say, well, it's very hard to say who are the real owners. If you look at the colonial era, that those colonial masters perhaps have a right to say, well, we now own these.
I think this is wrong. Even if Rosetta Stone is in England, we own that stone. Egypt has the right. It doesn't mean that you have an artifact in your museum that you own it. No, the motherland should own this. And this is something that we are going to stress in our new law that we are going to issue this year by the Parliament of Egypt.
Interestingly enough, another comment from a viewer that came by email from Sweden, from Stockholm, Adolfo Talpalar, actually echoes what the previous viewer said and says questions about property of land, and in particular of ancient civilization treasures, are very difficult. Nationalist views support that they belong to the country from which the objects were picked, but many objects are in the places where the discoverer believed they would be most secure. And this is, I guess, a question a lot of people have when it comes to the returning of antiquities. Will they be secure in the countries they return to?
This is really was an old say. I want you to see what really we are doing in Egypt now. Beautiful museums that better than any museum in Europe. Come and see the Nubian Museum, the Luxor Museum, the Coptic Museum. Our museums now are more secure, and the artifacts are in a beautiful display than many museums in Europe. And this is why this is old say. What's new that Egypt now is capable to protect their monuments, and there is no country in the world is doing what we do in museums, site management programs, protecting our monuments. Really, we have this projects now that everyone is talking about it, but in the past you could really say this, but now it is not true.
Well, Dr. Hawass, as a person who has the responsibility, and I guess listening to you, more importantly, the devotion and dedication for the preservation of these artifacts and relics and so on, how did you feel when you saw, for example, the Taliban destroy the Bamiyan statues, when you see history being wiped out like that?
I always say that when someone will go and steal something from a tomb, he does not only damage history, he damages not my history, he damaged his history. Because the Egyptian monuments do not belong to us, it belongs to everyone all over the world. And this is why we need the support of everyone to know that I am only, and we are the guardians of these monuments, but this is belonging to everyone. And therefore, it is something shame to see someone is paying for someone to go in a tomb and try to take one scene and he damage the whole tomb. Then he damage history.
I've read you talk about this as a shared heritage, that it's not really just one nation that owns the monuments, but it is something shared across countries, yes?
Yes.
Well, sir, also when it comes to when you see situations like Iraq, and of course after the collapse of a country like Iraq, there was so much looting, there was so much destruction. How can you do something to try and redress what has happened in somewhere like Iraq?
You know, we are helping now. We have some cooperation with the Director of Antiquities of Iraq, and what really we are doing now is trying to find out where are these monuments, because it's just it was taken. All the artifacts from the museum was damaged and was robbed and it was disappeared, and this is why we need to know where. And we are hoping that any museum in the States or in Europe, if anyone will buy stolen artifacts, we will cut completely the relation with these countries. But we need the Iraqi authorities now and the antiquities authorities to give us an inventory to know exactly what kind of artifacts with photographs, then we can go after them.
Well, sir, you know how when satellite television and movies and so on occupy the public's interest, I wonder to what extent the general public gives really serious thought to the issue of artifacts and national treasures nowadays.
You know, I think there is an awareness now among people about the benefit of returning stolen artifacts. You cannot believe, from the States here, I receive letters from people. Sometimes people have antiquities in their home. They sent it to me back. The FBI here in New York City sent to me 2 big reliefs that was stolen from Akhmim in Upper Egypt. I feel that in the whole world there is an awareness now that people want to support us in returning these artifacts to Egypt and other countries.
I wonder how much that is helped, that interest is boosted when there are major discoveries. Recently you were announcing the discovery of the 3,500-year-old mummy of Hatshepsut, and that's, I understand, the documentary of the on Discovery Channel. There's a huge documentary that you're hosting on that coming up. How much does that help to boost the interest?
You know, I will tell you, the discovery of the mummy of Queen Hatshepsut, when I did announce this discovery a few days ago from Cairo, it was the biggest news everywhere all over the world. Because to discover a mummy of a very important queen like Queen Hatshepsut, and to do the search in the Valley of the Kings, and go in tombs and try to take the mummies and put them under the CT scan machine and put a box to discover in this box the secrets of this mummy, and after that to discover the mummy and do DNA, to use technology in archaeology, because I do have the only and the first DNA lab in the basement of the Cairo Museum, and also the CT scan machine. Through this I can go inside the mummies to reveal their secrets, and the discovery of the mummy of Hatshepsut is the first to reveal about the mummies of the pharaohs.
Now, you mentioned the DNA testing and so on, and I wonder, since you first started with your love of archaeology and Egyptology, how much the tools have changed, what sort of tools you have apart from DNA testing now to not just retrace the steps through history, but also to prove the authenticity of certain treasures.
You know, DNA before was not really useful because there was no DNA lab only for mummies. We do have this DNA lab for mummies. We'll be able to find out about diseases through the CT scan machine, the age of the pharaohs, how they died, when they died, to find the relationship between every king and the other one through the DNA. Then for the first time, we can rewrite the history of the pharaohs.
Well, sir, I wonder with, you know, a lot of people are surprised, I think, about the idea that there are still tomb raiders, as they're called, you know, people who go out there and actually steal things from tombs in this modern age. How much of a problem has it become in this day and age where I guess there would be more security, there'd be more awareness of this kind of thing?
We in Egypt now, we did really improve lots of things now. And very few accidents like this happen because of the severe measurements that we are doing by changing this guarding system from guards with a stick to educated ones, and built storage magazines everywhere. Then we really try to stop this now. But the study and the technology that we do, it will reveal lots of secrets that really make interest in ancient Egypt. Look about this discovery. Everyone is talking about it. And this really can help also in making people to stop and against those who go inside tombs and magazines and steal monuments.
Well, sir, just a thought as we sort of wrap up the interview. I wonder, you're a very high-profile person. You've made it a personal mission. How much it's helped, with your engaging with the media to get this knowledge and this awareness out there to the public?
I will tell you, when I started even my career in Egypt, and I used to tell someone I'm an archaeologist, they would laugh. But since I think this media program that Discovery Channel, National Geographic, and everyone is doing, it really helped a lot in making the people to understand the pharaohs and to be in love with ancient Egypt more than talking about lost civilization and things like this. Then really, I believe for the last 10 years, big changes happened. And for example, when I used to give one lecture in the States here, people used to ask me about people came out of the space and built the pyramids. Now, it never happened anymore because people began to feel adventure in archaeology through this TV programs that done by all these channels.
Dr. Zahi Hawass, we wish you a lot of luck in your mission and thank you very much for being with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.